Hey everybody, welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. We're out here at Thompson High School, one of two locations that we'll be at for this week's show, as the Thompson Warriors and the Briarwood Lions have advanced to the third round of the 2019 postseason. The Warriors, they'll be in the semifinals of the Class 7A playoffs. Briarwood, they'll be in the quarterfinals of the Class 5A playoffs, as there is one more round in the 5A classification than there is in the 7A classification. But two big matchups, two top six matchups, as the Thompson-Hoover game, a rematch from a game earlier in the year, and also the third consecutive year those two teams have met in the semifinals of the Class 7A playoffs. That's a top five battle. You've got number 5 Hoover, number 2 Thompson in that game, and then over at Briarwood Christian School, where we'll do the Briarwood segment of this show, that's a team that they're taking on in Bibb County that is ranked number 2 in the 5A classification, where you've got Briarwood sitting at number 6. So you couldn't ask for anything better going into the third round of the 2019 postseason. These are all teams capable of winning a state championship. Obviously, Thompson and Hoover sit just one game away from getting to that title game. It would be the second year in a row for the Warriors to punch their ticket to the Class 7A title after beating Hoover in the semifinals last year. And for Briarwood to get there under first-year to the semifinals under first-year head coach Matthew Forrester would be an incredible story. We're going to talk about it all. There's a ton to touch on, so we're going to jump right in, and we're going to start with that game here at Thompson High School between the Warriors and the Buccaneers. We probably began the season all hoping for this to happen again, the third consecutive year that these two teams, Thompson and Hoover, will meet in the Class 7A semifinals. 2 years ago, it was the Hoover Buccaneers. They advanced out of the semifinal matchup, went on to the state championship game, won the state championship 2 years ago. Last year, it was the Warriors. They got revenge in the semifinal matchup, went on to their first state championship since early in the 1980s. They go on to lose that game in pretty dominant fashion to Central Phoenix City. So you know Thompson's going to want to get back there, avenge that loss from last year in the state championship game, but they've got to get past Hoover first to do so. And this is a matchup that we've obviously seen a lot of the last few years, and Thompson had never beaten Hoover in school history going in to that game 2 years ago in the regular season. They win that regular season matchup, then go on to lose in the semifinals, but now they've won back-to-back games against this Hoover team for the first time in school history. Obviously, to end last year in the semifinals, won that one, and then coming into this year, they win that game early in the season, 48-30. And we'll talk a little bit about what happened earlier this season and why it might not be a benefit that Thompson did win. If you look back to the last couple of years, the team that has won the regular season matchup has gone on to lose the semifinal matchup. That's something I'm sure Thompson's going to be aware of going into this game, as they want to try to break that trend and punch another ticket to the state championship game. But there's a lot. Anytime you're playing a team twice in one season, it's difficult. And you know this Hoover team, losing 2 in a row in this series, they're going to come out with vengeance on their mind, and this is not the team you want to face with vengeance on their mind. This is obviously one of the best dynasties to ever play football at the high school level in the state of Alabama, and Hoover's going to come out ready to go in this one. They've got their starting quarterback and Robbie Ashford back, and that's obviously going to be key. We'll talk a little bit about him and the 3 important keys, in my opinion, for Thompson going into this game, that I think if they do those 3 things, they're going to win this football game for the third time in a row. But they're going to be big things that they're going to have to improve on. One from that game earlier in the season, and 2 things that they've done kind of consistently that they have got to shore up going in to this matchup. But looking back to last week, we obviously saw what Thompson was able to do against Florence. They pick up a 38-31 victory in that game, and it was a game that really they seemed to have in hand. They played much better than Florence throughout the night, seemed to be the better football team, but at the end of the day, the 2 mistakes that have cost them at times this year and that we're going to talk about, they had some penalties that they struggled with, and they couldn't get off the field on third down a lot in that game, while also struggling to stop a dual-threat quarterback as well. But the way this offense is playing right now here at Thompson, they continue to flourish. Last week in that game, Sawyer Pate coming off a perfect 12-for-12 performance, 200-plus passing yards the week before. This past week goes 20 of 27 for 338 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he continues to lead this offense at Thompson, and it helps when you have playmakers around you that if you get the ball in their hands, they can take it to the house any given play, and that's what you've got with 4 different receivers that have really stepped up throughout the year. But in this game, 3 guys, they stepped up and had spectacular games. You look at Mike Petway, he's been the go-to target all season long, and he had 10 catches for 189 yards and a touchdown in Thompson's win last week. And then J.B. Mitchell, one of his best games of the season as well. Really, a lot of his yardage came after the catch, as well as he made some big-time plays in the game, and he finished with 6 catches for 134 yards and a touchdown. And then Trey Roberson, who's been used frequently as well, and he's just had to sit behind a couple of other guys, but he's made some game-changing plays throughout the season as well. In this one, he had 2 touchdown catches, finishing with 3 catches for 58 yards. So 2 of his 3 catches in the game went for touchdowns. So you look at this Thompson offense, they've also got Jarrett Crockett, JoJo Gators, Brandon Franklin in the backfield, an offensive line that's grown throughout the season. The offense is good. They put up 48 points against Hoover in the first matchup. The offense wasn't the problem in that matchup. This offense has been consistent. It's been steady. It's been really good all season. The only time it really struggled, a little bit against Mountain Brook and then against Hewitt-Trussville in back-to-back weeks, their final 2 regular season games. But through the first 2 weeks of the postseason, the offense is clicking again, and it's an offense that's been playing outstanding football all season long. You just look at what they did in that first game against Hoover, winning that game 48-30. This offense right now, they've scored 50-plus points 3 times this season, have scored 40-plus in close to 8 games this season. So it's an offense that's going to put up points. I expect them to continue to do that, even going up against a Hoover defense that wants revenge and is going to try to shut them down. Thompson's offense is designed to get the ball out of Pate's hands and get it into playmakers' hands. It's tough to shut down because there's so many options across the field. So I do still expect Thompson to score points going into this football game. The defense, they've been pretty consistent throughout the season. They haven't been bad. They haven't been great. But one thing they've got to improve on is getting off the field on third downs and limiting penalties. And that's going to get us into this game coming up this week. Obviously, Hoover, they're coming off a 23-20 win over James Clemens last week in overtime. That's a really good James Clemens team as well. But Hoover, they narrowly edged that game out in overtime. We're down 20-17 early in that first overtime. They end up scoring a touchdown to win it 23-20. So you've got 2 teams coming in with some confidence. But if you look back at what Thompson has struggled with this season, they've struggled at stopping dual-threat quarterbacks, they've struggled with penalties, and they've struggled at getting off the field on third down. Those are going to be the 3 keys going into this matchup if Thompson wants to come out victorious and punch another ticket to the state championship. Just look back to last week and what Thompson struggled with. As far as penalties, they had 11 of them for 85 yards, and it was just they struggled with them. I mean, throughout the game, they had some costly penalties that pushed their offense back and set them behind the 8 ball, and defensively were giving up penalties and allowing Florence to advance the ball down the field, and it didn't help on third downs either. But you look at penalties first. A couple weeks ago, in their only loss against of the season against Hewitt-Trussville, 12 for 105. That's how many penalty yards they had off of 12 penalties. And then you look ahead to the first round of the playoffs, they had just 5 for 30 in a dominant win. So that was a key difference in those 2 games. But then last week they get back to struggling with penalties, have those 11 penalties for 85 yards, and it almost cost them. They did hang on to win that game 38-31, but without those penalties, that game's not even close. They win that game going away, and the same can be said for what's happened on third down. That's what almost cost them against Mountain Brook, was not being able to get off the field on third down, giving up large chunk plays on those third down conversions, and that's what's been happening consistently throughout the season that Thompson wants to fix. Head coach Mark Freeman's harped on, and the players know that that's a key emphasis of focus going into practice this week as well. Last week, Thompson gave up 10 third down conversions in 19 attempts, and what that 19 attempts tells you is that Florence was moving the ball and getting third down opportunities and converting 10 of them. That's more than 50% that they converted on third down. When you have double-digit third down conversions, that's never a good sign. So that's something Thompson's also going to have to fix up this week. And against Mountain Brook, that's what they really struggled with, and it almost cost them in that game as well. When Thompson gets off the field on third down, that puts that offense right back on the field, and it's really difficult to stop this offense. This offense, if they get back on the field, they're likely going to go down and score unless they get a penalty and set themselves up in a bad situation. So if that defense is getting off the field on third down, Thompson says he's got a 7-0 lead. Defense comes out, gets a 3 and out. They're able to go back down and score another and go up 14-0. Playing with a 2-touchdown lead with an offense like this, that's going to be tough for Hoover to overcome. So the defense stepping up on third downs is obviously going to be key for Thompson if they want to be able to play comfortably in this game. Otherwise, it's going to be stressful. They're going to be holding on like they did last week, or they're going to lose, and their season's going to come to an end. So it's up to them. The team's fired up. They're ready for this game. They just have to be smart when it comes to penalties, and they have to play good on third down and get off the football field. Beyond that, you look at what they did earlier this season against Hoover. They struggled slightly on third down. They were 7 of 13. They gave up 7 conversions and 13 attempts to the Buccaneers. That was when Robbie Ashford was on the field and healthy in that game. Once he went out, they were able to make the game-changing plays they needed to. They got off the field on third down, but now Ashford's back and he's healthy again, and that's a dual-threat quarterback that's tough to account for. You look at what happened earlier this season. Robbie Ashford had 126 rushing yards and 261 passing yards while missing a good chunk of the second half. So he's a dual-threat quarterback that can make plays both with his arm and with his legs, but it's with his legs that you have to be concerned about. Look back to last week against Florence. D. Beckwith, another dual-threat quarterback that Thompson had to face, and they struggled. Beckwith had 112 rushing yards, and that's what's key to me. He also had 106 passing yards, but the 112 rushing yards, that's something. He's a very similar quarterback to what you're going to get in Ashford this week, and I expect the emphasis throughout the week to be focusing on not letting him get out to the edge. That's what they struggled with against Beckwith. Beckwith was able to get around the edge, and he reeled off some big chunk gains. They controlled the inside pretty well. If they can control the inside and control the edge, then Thompson's going to be in good shape in this game defensively. But that's got to be the focus on the defensive side of the ball. You can't have Ashford going for 300 to 400 all-purpose yards in this game. If you can limit him to less than 100 yards rushing, then Thompson, I think, wins this football game. I think if you ask head coach Mark Freeman, would he take Ashford under 100 yards going into the game, say he even has 99, I think he would say yes, because that means the defense is limiting what he's able to do in the run game, and I think that's what beats Thompson, is if he's able to get going in the run game. So those three keys, I think, if they can handle those three, get off the field on third down, limit the penalties, and also contain Robbie Ashford to the pocket, keep him from getting to the outside, that's what's going to be key going into this matchup. I think they do those three things, they're going to win the football game. That said, this is a Hoover football team, obviously one of the best in the state's history. They're going to come in, having lost those two in a row, losing last year in the semifinals. They're going to be really hungry, and they're going to be really physical, and it's going to be a tough battle and a tough test for Thompson to be able to pick up this win. But if there's any team that's ready for it, it's what we've seen from the Thompson Warriors the last 3 years. The turnaround from this program, unbelievable, from 0-10 in 2014 to back-to-back 5-5 seasons to now their third consecutive semifinal berth. And this group of guys is, I think, the biggest storyline of the last 3 years. You look at this group specifically, obviously Talia Tagovailoa, the quarterback here the last 2 years, one of the best to ever come through the state of Alabama at the quarterback position. But you come into this year with a new cast of defensive players, while talented, very young, and then you've also got a young offensive line. They lost pretty much everything there, and a brand new starting quarterback replacing one of the most talented in state history. There were a lot of question marks to whether this team could live up to the hype that the last two had, and they came into this season, and they told me before the season, Petway and Pate both, they told me as their senior year, they wanted to come in and continue the legacy, continue the trend. They didn't want to be the team that set this Thompson football program back a step, and they've stepped up and they've made the plays and done what they needed to, and now they're in the semifinals again. I don't put anything past them. I think they can win this football game. It's going to be a challenge. I think Hoover's got the upper hand because you're playing a team for the second time in the same season, but this is a team, this is a group. They're bought in, they're bonded together, and they've got a lot of talented playmakers. They could win this football game against Thompson or against Hoover. They could make it 3 games in a row, which would be remarkable, having not beaten this team ever just a couple years ago. So we'll see how it all unfolds. This is going to be a raucous atmosphere here behind me on Friday night in this rematch, the third consecutive year in the semifinals between these two teams. There's definitely a rivalry, and you're going to see a packed-out stadium ready to see which team can punch their ticket to the Class 7A state championship. Now out here at Briarwood Christian School, where they'll get set for our other top 6 battle this week, as the number 2 Lions have advanced on to the Class 5A quarterfinals with one additional round in Class 5A compared to Class 7A, and they get set to host number 2 Bibb County. So you've got number 6 Briarwood, number 2 Bibb County, in what should be an exciting playoff matchup and atmosphere out here at Briarwood Christian School, and a welcome sight home after hitting the road for a 3-hour road trip down to the southwest corner of Alabama to play Jackson last week. They pick up a 24-14 victory against the Aggies on the road. First year under head coach Matthew Forrester, and this Briarwood team is clicking at the right time of the season. They lost their first 2 games of the year, lost to Chelsea out of the gate in game 1, but they were able to bounce back, and that first game ended up being a forfeit win. So right now this team's sitting at 11-1, and they've won 10 games in a row. So this Briarwood team playing its best football at the right time of the year, and it's come against some great competition, and I think that's a big advantage that Briarwood will have in this football game is the competition level that they've played to this point in the season. If you just look in the playoffs in the south portion of the Class 5A bracket right now, there's still 3 total teams left from Briarwood's region, including them, and that's going to be Ramsey and Pleasant Grove. Pleasant Grove, the only team that Briarwood did lose to in region play in that second game of the season, but they've won 10 in a row since then, and both of those teams, Ramsey and Pleasant Grove, still in the playoffs playing each other this Friday night as well, and that's a Ramsey team that Briarwood went on to beat. So you look at that, and you look at how they've been battle-tested, Briarwood has, going into this matchup against arguably the best team they've played. Pleasant Grove and Ramsey, 2 talented teams as well. All 3 of those teams, including Bibb County, capable of winning state championships. So if Briarwood's able to win this one and advance to the semifinals, they've proven to me that they've beaten the 3 best teams on their schedule and 3 teams capable of winning a Class 5A state title. So a big opportunity for them on their home field this Friday night. But Bibb County, they've been battle-tested too. They've played several 6A teams, and they've shown that they can edge out close games, and so has Briarwood at times this year. But we'll talk a little bit more about those close games in just a second. Bibb County last week, they had one of those tightly contested games to get to this point in the postseason. They beat Greenville 12-6 to advance in the postseason, and they're still undefeated. This is a team that's 12-0 overall. Now their schedule in region play not quite as difficult as what Briarwood has faced, but they did test themselves out of region, and to be in the quarterfinals of the Class 5A playoffs, they've clearly got a talented football team. Anybody left standing at this point in the year is a football team that's capable, in my opinion, of winning a state championship. So these 2 teams very capable of doing that, and it starts on the defensive side of the football, and that's where you've got to look at what Briarwood has done in recent weeks to get excited about their opportunity this Friday night, because if you look at the opponents that they've played, the opponents they've beaten the last few weeks, dating back to that Ramsey game where they won 21-20, that's a very good Ramsey football team, arguably the best in the state in the 5A classification. Briarwood not only pulled off the upset, but that was a very good defensive football team that Ramsey has, and Briarwood went out there and put up 21 points on them with a freshman quarterback this year. And their backup running back playing in the second half, who's just a sophomore. So that shows the talent that you have on the offensive line, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. But the offensive line is going to be one of the biggest keys for Briarwood going into this game, going up against another talented defense. But then a couple weeks after that, they beat Hueytown 7-0 in a defensive battle, and that's a very good defensive football team in the 6A classification. We're ranked number 3 in that classification at the time, and I know Roydale Williams, the Alabama commit at Hueytown, didn't play at running back in that game, so Briarwood's defense didn't have to account for that. But at the same time, the defensive starters were in for Hueytown in that game, and Briarwood still found a way to make a play to win that football game with a touchdown pass from freshman quarterback Christopher Vizina to wide receiver Blake McKinnon. That's become a special connection, too, that we'll talk a little bit about. But then going into the playoffs, an easy win against Marbury in the first round. But last week against Jackson, they win that game 24-14, and that was a Jackson football team giving up less than 15 points per game defensively on the season. So Briarwood's been battle-tested against very good defenses so far this season, and that's going to continue this week, and that's what's a good thing. You've had those tests against those strong defensive opponents, and now going into this week, you get a Bibb County team that's giving up just 10.3 points per game. So average-wise, this will be the most difficult defense that they have faced this season. But you look at what Briarwood's done on that side of the ball as well, a team that's giving up 16.8 points per game. On the defensive side of the football, they've given up 20 or less in 9 games this season. So Briarwood's defense more than capable of playing in a strong defensive battle type football game. And in the playoffs, that's what they like to do on their home field. They're going to have some advantages in this game, but you look at the way Bibb County has played on the defensive side of the football. They've given up 16 or less in 6 in a row. So they're not only playing good overall this season, but they've been playing really good heading into the postseason and obviously through the first 2 rounds of the postseason. And in those six straight games where they've given up 16 or less, they've given up 6 or less in 4 of those 6 games. So and that includes 3 shutouts as well. So a defensive unit that's just playing extremely good football and going up against this Briarwood offense, which is starting to gain some momentum. That's what you want to see if you're a Bibb County fan. That being said, this Briarwood offense has a lot of momentum coming into this matchup. And you look back to that Ramsey game, Luke Pruitt, who had been the star running back at Briarwood throughout the season, his senior year, he was going over 100 yards almost every game, and he went down with a shoulder injury in that game, missed the second half, and in steps the other Luke Rebels, a sophomore running back who's got a ton of talent. It's like the 3rd or 4th year in a row that they've had a sophomore that could step up here at the running back position. Just looking at when Pruitt started as a sophomore, J.R. Tranrino before that a sophomore as well. All these guys capable, they're ready, they step into the system and they know what to do because they've been in this system for a while, and they step in and they're ready to go. And Rebels picked up the pace. He came in and he ran for 100-plus yards in 3 straight games, and in their first-round victory over Marbury, had 4 touchdowns and 200-plus all-purpose yards. So you've now got 2 running backs, because Pruitt's back and healthy as well, 2 running backs that can really carry the load going into this matchup against Bibb County and a strong defensive team. But you've also got a quarterback like we've talked about in Vizina who can step up and make plays in the passing game. And then you look at guys like Blake McKinnon at receiver who's really stepped up as a go-to target. So now you not only have to respect the 2 running backs in the backfield, but you've also got to play somebody deep that can cover McKenna if he's able to beat his defensive back. So you've got a ton of talent, but the key is what we see on the offensive line, and it's arguably the best offensive line in the 5A classification, and that's why they've been able to beat some of these very good defenses, is because that offensive line's able to open up some holes, able to push some guys backwards, despite the physicality that those defenses have had. And I think that's going to be a key again this week. It's going to be a defensive battle, and when you have a team like Briarwood has that's built for that with what they have at the running back position, you look at that, and they're going to want to run and churn the ball and move the clock throughout this game. I think that's going to be key, and if they're able to do that, then they're going to have their chances to win, because that's keeping Bibb County's offense off the field, but at the same time, it's getting your offense some momentum throughout the game. I think this is going to be a very good, tightly contested, low-scoring football game, and any big chunk play that either of these teams can reel off is going to possibly be the difference. And when I look at that, I look at the close games these 2 teams have been in. You just look at the way Bibb County has played so far this season. They've been in 5 games where they've scored 19 or less points against their best defensive teams that they've faced. So the offense has struggled against really good defenses so far this season. In several of the games, in 3 of those 5 that they've scored 19 or less, 3 of those 5 they won by 2 or less points. So they won 2 of their games by 2 points, another one by 1 point. The other 2 games of those 5, they won 12-6 and 14-0. So the defense has shown they can win games for Bibb County, but the same thing has been said for Briarwood all season long. And the thing I think makes such a big difference in this game when you look at those close 1-2 point games is going to be special teams, is going to be defense forcing turnovers, and Briarwood has shown me throughout the season that the special teams can make big plays, game-changing plays, and so can the defense. Last week it was Tyler Wall with a pick 6 that really sealed that game to pick up the 24-14 victory against Jackson. They blocked kicks against Ramsey. They block a game-winning field goal opportunity from the Rams, and really close right here behind me from very close in, almost an extra point attempt, and Briarwood's able to get in the backfield and block that kick. They've made those kind of plays on defense on special teams all season. They come after kicks, and that could be the difference in a close game like this. I think you're going to see a low-scoring battle, a defensive battle between these two teams. Like I said, giving up 16 points or less between the two of them. So you're going to see two defenses ready to go, a playoff-type atmosphere. But I just think something tells me special teams is going to play a difference. This home field advantage is going to play a difference. And then the defensive side at Briarwood is going to make one play that could end up leading to the win. And if not, I do think their offense can step up with what we've seen late in the season against a lot of these talented teams. I think that Bibb County, arguably, no better than Ramsey, no better than Pleasant Grove, no better than Hueytown. That said, it's going to be a tough battle, but I think Briarwood's up to the test. They've got a lot of experience. First-year head coach under Matthew Forrester, but this is a guy that's played at Briarwood. He's played in big games, knows what to expect in these kind of atmospheres, and he's been under legendary head coach Fred Yancey for so long as the defensive coordinator. Now in his first year, already to the quarterfinals, so I think he knows what he's doing. I think Briarwood's got a great chance to walk out of here, get to the Class 5A semifinals, and have a chance to punch their ticket to the state championship. It's going to be fun to see, but I can't wait to see what happens between these two strong defensive football teams right here at Briarwood Christian School on Friday night. That's going to do it for this week's Shelby County High School football show. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Can't wait to see what happens this Friday night and what I think is the most exciting week of the playoffs we've possibly ever had in Shelby County. 2 top 6 battles, a berth in the state championship in Class 7A on the line, a berth in the semifinals of Class 5A on the line for a first-year head coach. There's a couple of special storylines. It's going to be crazy at both Briarwood and here at Thompson High School as both of these teams get geared up for big-time football games. We'll see you live on Friday night with our Shelby County pregame show to get you ready for both games and the action ahead. It's going to be an exciting one. I can't wait. We'll see you then.